The date is November 20th, 1943, on the blood-soaked sands of Betio, a tiny island in the Tarawa Atoll. The humid air hangs thick with the stench of cordite and death. For the men of the 2nd Marine Division, it is an apocalypse. They are caught in a perfectly engineered kill zone, pinned down by a relentless storm of machine gun and mortar fire from an unseen, deeply entrenched enemy. The turquoise waters of the lagoon, which were supposed to be their swift path to victory, have turned into a crimson graveyard. The landing craft, hung up on an unexpected coral reef hundreds of yards from shore, have become little more than floating coffins. The Marines wading through the chest-deep water are being scythed down in droves. From his command post aboard the battleship USS Maryland, steaming miles offshore, Major General Julian C. Smith stares towards the distant smoke-shrouded island, his heart a leaden weight in his chest. The reports filtering back are a disconnected nightmare of chaos and carnage. Communications are failing. Units are shattered, leaders are lost, and the entire amphibious assault, one of the most ambitious of the Pacific War, is teetering on the brink of catastrophic failure. The initial waves are pinned down on the beach, unable to advance more than a few agonizing yards inland. The Japanese defenders, elite troops of the Special Naval Landing Force under the command of Rear Admiral Keiji Shibazaki, are fighting with a fanaticism the Americans have never before witnessed. Before the battle, Shibazaki had boasted that it would take 1,000,000 men 100 years to conquer Tarawa. On this horrifying first day, his boast feels terrifyingly close to the truth. In the midst of this inferno, a single garbled radio message cuts through the static. It is a desperate plea from the beleaguered commanders on the beach, a raw, unfiltered snapshot of the hell they are enduring. The message is short, disjointed, and filled with the terrifying urgency of men who believe they are about to be annihilated. It speaks of issue and doubt, of heavy casualties, and of a situation that is touch and go. It is a cry for help, a stark admission that the might of the United States Marine Corps is being bled white on a tiny speck of coral in the middle of the Pacific. And as the American radio operators struggle to make sense of the fractured transmission, they are not the only ones listening. Miles away, in a fortified bunker on Kwajalein Atoll, the headquarters of the Japanese 4th Fleet, a team of highly skilled intelligence officers is also hunched over their receivers. Their job is to monitor all American radio traffic, to sift through the endless chatter for any scrap of intelligence that could give them an edge. They have been listening intently to the sounds of the battle for Tarawa, trying to piece together a coherent picture from the cacophony. Suddenly, their filters catch the same desperate transmission. A junior officer, his fingers flying across his notepad, scribbles down the cryptic English words. He rushes the transcript to his superior, his face a mask of controlled excitement. This is it. This is the proof they have been waiting for. The message is immediately relayed up the chain of command, flying across the vast distances of the Pacific to the Imperial Japanese Navy General Staff in Tokyo. In the sterile, wood-paneled offices of the High Command, where the grand strategy of the war is decided, the message arrives like a thunderclap. For weeks, the admirals and generals have been locked in grim debate. The American island-hopping campaign is gaining momentum, a relentless westward advance that threatens the very heart of the empire. The Gilbert Islands, and Tarawa within them, were supposed to be a key bastion in the outer defense perimeter, a line in the sand that could not be crossed. The fanatical defense of the island was designed not just to hold ground, but to inflict such a horrifying number of casualties that it would break the American will to fight. Now, this intercepted message seems to confirm their strategy is working beyond their wildest dreams. The Americans are not just being held back, they are being shattered. The phrases "issue in doubt" and "heavy casualties" are seized upon. To the Japanese commanders, whose own military doctrine prizes stoicism and forbids any admission of weakness, such a message could only mean one thing: the American invasion force is on the verge of complete collapse. The carefully constructed narrative they have built for themselves, A narrative of Japanese spiritual superiority and the inherent weakness of the materialistic American soldier is being validated in real time. A wave of triumphant optimism sweeps through the high command. This is more than just a successful defense. This is a turning point. They believe they have found the enemy's breaking point. Maps are unrolled, and strategists begin to speak not of defense, but of counterattack. Could they annihilate the American fleet now clustered vulnerably around Tarawa? Could they turn this single brutal battle into a decisive victory that would halt the American advance for good? The intercepted message is treated as gospel, an unassailable piece of intelligence that confirms their deepest hopes. From Tokyo, orders flash back across the empire. The message is broadcast on Japanese domestic radio, its contents carefully curated and amplified. The news is trumpeted as a glorious victory. The brave garrison at Tarawa, it is announced, has heroically repulsed the American invaders, inflicting devastating losses. The enemy is in disarray, their morale broken. It is a moment of profound national pride, a shot of adrenaline for a populace growing weary of a long and costly war. The story of Tarawa becomes a powerful piece of propaganda, a testament to the indomitable spirit of the Japanese warrior and the supposed fragility of their foe. The cryptic American signal becomes the cornerstone of this entire narrative of victory. But back on Tarawa, the reality is shifting. The intercepted message, that desperate cry from the chaos of the initial landing, was just a snapshot in time. It captured a moment of extreme peril, but it did not capture the defining characteristic of the United States Marine, an obstinate, bloody-minded refusal to quit. The Marines are still pinned down, yes. They are still taking horrific casualties, but they are not breaking. In small, isolated groups, they are beginning to do the impossible. They are finding cracks in the Japanese defenses. A lone Marine with a flamethrower silences a machine gun nest. A small squad uses grenades to clear a pillbox that has held up an entire company. Slowly, inch by agonizing inch, they are clawing their way inland. While the Japanese High Command is celebrating a victory that does not yet exist, the American command structure is adapting to the brutal reality on the ground. General Smith, receiving that same desperate message, does not see proof of impending defeat. He sees a crisis that must be managed. He makes the difficult, gut-wrenching decision to commit his reserves. More men are thrown into the meat grinder, but they are also bringing with them more flamethrowers, more demolition charges, more of the specialized equipment needed to dig out a deeply entrenched enemy. Amphibious tractors, the Amtraks, begin to find passable routes over the reef, ferrying precious reinforcements and supplies directly to the beachhead, braving the constant fire. The tide of the battle, which had seemed so certain just hours before, is beginning to turn. By the second day, the Marines have established a viable, if tenuous, foothold. They have crossed the deadly beach and are now locked in a brutal close-quarters fight among the shattered palm trees and fortified bunkers of the island's interior. The fighting is savage, a series of desperate, small-unit actions. But the momentum has shifted. The Americans now have tanks ashore. Their artillery is finding its range. Naval gunfire, directed by observers on the island, is systematically pulverizing the Japanese strongpoints. The systematic, overwhelming industrial might of the United States is beginning to assert itself against the fanatical courage of the Japanese defenders. In Tokyo and Kwailine, the initial euphoria begins to curdle into confusion. The radio silence from Admiral Shibazaki's garrison on Tarawa is the first ominous sign. The triumphant reports they expected to receive are not coming. Instead, the American radio traffic, which they continue to monitor, is changing in tone. The panicked, disjointed messages are being replaced by calm, professional, and chillingly effective coordination. They hear call signs organizing airstrikes with deadly precision. They hear logistical requests for more ammunition, more water, more plasma, the sounds of an army that is not retreating, but consolidating and preparing to finish the fight. The Japanese High Command is now in a state of cognitive dissonance. Their entire understanding of the battle was built upon that one intercepted message. They had committed to a narrative, broadcast it to their people, and based their strategic thinking upon it. Now the facts on the ground are systematically dismantling that narrative. The defeated enemy is advancing. The impregnable fortress is crumbling. The silence from Shibazaki is no longer a mystery. It is a grim certainty. He and almost every single man in his 4,700-strong garrison are fighting to the last, dying in their bunkers and spider holes, fulfilling their promise to fight to the death. By the end of the third day, November 23rd, the island of Betio is declared secure. The battle for Tarawa is over. It has been one of the costliest victories in Marine Corps' history, with over 1,000 Americans killed and more than 2,000 wounded in just 76 hours. The island is a wasteland, a charnel house littered with the dead of both sides. But it is an American victory. For the Japanese High Command, the final realization is a bitter and terrifying pill to swallow. The cryptic message they had intercepted was not a sign of the enemy's collapse. It was a sign of their resilience. It was the sound of an enemy who could stare into the abyss, report truthfully on the horror of their situation, and then find a way to climb back out. They had fundamentally misunderstood their opponent. They had mistaken a moment of crisis for a state of terminal weakness. Their belief in their own spiritual superiority had blinded them to the gritty, adaptable, and ultimately overwhelming power of the American war machine and the incredible tenacity of its fighting men. The intercepted signal from Tarawa became a cautionary tale within Japanese intelligence circles. It was a stark lesson in the danger of confirmation bias, of hearing what you want to hear and building a world of illusion upon a single ambiguous piece of data. They had wanted the Americans to be weak, and so they interpreted the message as proof of weakness. In doing so, they had celebrated a phantom victory while the real battle was being lost. It was a miscalculation that would be repeated in various forms throughout the remainder of the war, as the relentless American advance pushed ever closer to the shores of Japan itself, an advance built on the sacrifices of men who, in their darkest hour on a bloody beach, had the courage to admit that the issue was in doubt and then fought like hell to resolve it.